with the championship season about to kick off, it's all systems go. Well, apart from my laptop. The Rams have now made 10 summer signings. It doesn't seem like it will stop there. So how are John Eustace's sides shaping off ahead of their trip down the A50? And what can we realistically expect from Derby this season? That's all of this episode of the Rams Review podcast. Jack with you, Nigel alongside me. How are you, Nigel?
Very well, thank you, Jack. Sounds like my laptop's better than you as well. So yeah.
Yes, no, that's fair comment. And I'm delighted to say that Leigh Curtis is with us as well. Leigh, how are you, mate?
Oh, thank you, Jack. Yourself?
Yeah, all good aside from sorting that out, but hopefully everything holds up. If
Yeah.
anything's a bit weird on this episode, then apologies to anyone listening or watching. That's why. But no, hopefully we can have a good conversation because the excitement is certainly building. So yeah, I mean, I guess let's start with just documenting that this is what this is Wednesday. Latest signings. I feel like we need to clarify this given the amount of rumours and when people might listen to this. Latest signings are Bobby Clark and Dion Sanderson. So what do you know about them, Leigh? What can you tell us there?
Well, I mean, the Bobby Clark transfer is a very exciting one, and the interest in him stretches way back to I think the September 2023. So they've been long-term admirers of him. I think he even wrote last summer that he was sort of amid their discussions about potential candidates, and then obviously Jurgen Klopp left Liverpool, Pep Lijnders left to go to Red Bull Salzburg, and obviously took Bobby Clark with him. But yeah, it's been one of those signings that there's been probably talked about a long time, and probably Derby, for whatever reason, circumstances have perhaps got in the way of doing it in the past. Because obviously in 2023-24, it was Klopp's last season. They had considerable injury problems, and then obviously, if you remember, he played. I think he came on as a substitute in the game against Chelsea at Wembley. So it showed you how highly he was regarded at Anfield. So I think he's an excellent signing because for me, I think in the last, I would say certainly since the team's come up from, in League One through to the Championship, I do feel Derby have missed a traditional sort of number eight who's capable of taking players on and scoring goals from midfield. I think if you are going to have sort of designs on progressing from where they finished last year, then you need a midfielder who's capable of getting 8, 10, 12 goals the season just to take the burden off the strikers, really. So I'm really excited by his arrival. I think he's a terrific talent. For whatever reason, I don't think it's quite worked out for him at Salzburg, but he'll have the bit between the teeth. He's from good footballing stock. His dad's Lee Clark, isn't it? He used to play for Newcastle, so he's got a good sounding board there, and he's got a bit of a point to prove. So I really like that signing. Not surprised by the Dion Sanderson signing at all. I think this is the fourth time that John Eustace has been at a club where he's either signed him or he's joined. Obviously, somebody he trusts incredibly. And I know, obviously, he came on against Derby last season, didn't he? In the game against when Blackburn played here at Pride Park early on in the season. In fact, I actually think he came on as a holding midfield player in that game, if I remember rightly. But very versatile across the back, and a good squad player. And you look at the squad now, and it's got such strength and depth. That it is exciting. I can't lie. Go into the season full of optimism. I think Derby will be nowhere near the relegation battle this season, but it's just a question of how far they can actually go with this new squad of players. Because my only caveat is it is pretty much a brand new team, and it will take time for things to settle down. And plus, then you've got a stack of injuries as well.
Yeah, it's going to be about gelling in the early parts of the season, isn't it? With 10 signings at the moment, and as I say, probably more to come from the looks of things. I guess you'll be across all of that and any further developments on Derbyshire Live and in the Derby Telegraph, right?
Yeah, well, I'll try to be, but I think, yeah. So, I expect there to be more business done because I still think they're short of a wide player. I think if Corey Blackett-Taylor gets injured, they've not really got anybody with sort of his pace or bedevilment. And obviously, they lost Mendes Lang, didn't they, in the summer to MK Dons. and obviously a right back as well. I mean, I think it's been pretty well documented that they've looked at several right backs, and obviously they're looking at the kid at Chelsea, Alfie Gilchrist at the moment. So, yeah, I would expect a couple more in through the door. Whether that's before Stoke remains to be seen, but I would expect them obviously to be more additions before the window shuts at the end of the month for sure.
Lee, do you
100%.
think the arrival of Clark means that shuts the door perhaps on a return for Harrison Armstrong?
Interesting, great question that because interestingly enough, picked up on David Moyes' quotes after the game against Manchester United on Sunday. They've had real problems getting players in through the door. So I think I think that when I last heard they were down to like 50. In fact, there was a piece on Talk Sport saying that they couldn't actually right now field a Premier League squad. So, and then David, I think, did an interview last week about needing players in through the door. So it's like all these things. Harrison Armstrong happened sort of quite late in the window, didn't it? So I would imagine Everton would have to do their business first before they make a decision. But speaking to the lad at Everton, Joe Thomas, who sort of like works for our sister paper, the Liverpool Echo, they've certainly not ruled him out going out on loan again. I just think with the team at the minute, where would he play? But at the moment, Derby putting together such a squad, such a strength and depth, I possibly wouldn't rule that deal out from happening if they wanted somebody of his caliber because he was brilliant, wasn't he? I mean, he was excellent in the time he was here, and he can play in a variety of positions. He can play as an 8, he can play as a 10, he can play as a holding midfield player. So, yeah, I certainly wouldn't rule that one out at the moment.
Interesting.
Yeah, no, so that's potentially in the pipeline. What do you make of Derby's other summer signings, Lee? Anyone else stand out for you over kind of pre-season and what you've maybe seen of them? Although we've not seen quite a lot of them actually, haven't we? So a lot of them have been injured so far, or not at the fit
Yeah.
list.
I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I thought they were solid against the Traumatos without being spectacular. I think John Eustace correctly called it professional. I thought it was bang on. I still think that they are creatively. I just think they just need to sharpen the tools a little bit. I think last season was a big problem scoring goals from open play. We were reliant on set pieces a lot towards the back end of the season. There's nothing wrong with that. There are plenty of ways to skin a cat, but I think I would just like to see Derby be a bit more creative in open play, and I think the signings have addressed that. I think Ryan Brewster is a clever signing. I think he's been signed as a number 10. Chris Wilder moved him back into that position back in January, and by all accounts, he was very good for Sheffield United there. So, and plus, he does give you that versatility. So if things aren't going well in a game, there'll be tactical switches. He can probably play on the left, coming on the right, coming into his right, could play on the right. Be a bit more orthodox and go outside. Could play up front. He obviously started his career out there at Liverpool, and he had that wonderful season at Swansea, didn't he? That earned him a big move. So I think he's a clever addition. I think Bobby Clark is something that Derby have needed. Somebody who's a driving force from midfield, who's a good ball carrier, who's a bit cute with his passing. Because I had a discussion with somebody about this at the game at Atromitos. Can you remember how many times last season Derby threaded the ball through the middle of the pitch for a striker to run onto and then finish? I can't. Off the top of my head, I can't think of many goals that happen that way. So, he's a vital cog. I think Danny Batt's got great experience. Andy Vyman's a really clever player, good squad player, good influence around the dressing room. Comes back to Derby with a bit of a point to prove. So I've been really impressed with the business that they've done. Like I say, I just think they're probably a little bit short in the wide areas. That's one thing that I think if you've got the likes of Carlton Morris up there, who is a real presence and a real threat aerially, then they're perhaps going to need one or two more wide players. I think just to make sure he gets given the service.
From what I've seen pre-season, it seemed like we're going to be a more possession-based side than we have been for
Yeah.
the last couple of seasons.
Yeah, definitely. I think if you at the Atromitos game, I think we had the two centre halves on the edge of the 6-yard box, and we're trying to play through the lines. And I think That's really good. I mean, I was fortunate enough to go to the media day and watch him in training, and there was a lot of work being done on patterns of play, and certainly you sort of look for those things in games, and that those things were coming off against the Traumatos. So they've obviously worked really hard on that. I think once David Ozo is sort of flying, and I think he's been a really good addition too. They've got players who can handle the ball in those situations and move the ball through midfield. So I think it's going to be a very, very interesting season. I think they will surprise a few this season, Derby. Not quite convinced that they will be top six material, but I think they will have a good go, and I think they'll be. I would like to say probably around 10th. I think that's probably where I would go right now.
Interesting. I think it's definitely something where this feels like the start of something good long term as well, isn't it? Where this is hopefully just the first step. So say they get 10th, then another season down the line, maybe you look at the playoff push and it goes like that. I mean, I have to say, I tweeted it on Saturday after watching the Atromitos game. I really like the way we're sort of lining up. We've got those different kind of patterns of play, those rotations and so on. As somebody who nerds out on all things tactics, I am definitely, loving that. I will be rewatching things before I do a press conference and probably find something equally nerdy to ask John Eustace as I've done previously. But I think it is. This is a Derby team now seeming to try and develop more of an identity. But I think that pragmatism of things like that 3-5-2 from last season when Derby needs to see a game out will remain, and that's there for them to go back to if and when required.
Yeah, I mean, I think John.
You mentioned sorry.
Go on, Nigel. Sorry, go on.
Answer that one. I'll come back because I was going to change it slightly. Go on.
But no, I think when John was obviously at Blackburn, he played 4-2-3-1, didn't he? And the squad, I think, with the business that Derby have done has been geared around towards that. Obviously, we didn't really have an authentic number 10 last season. We sort of tried, if you remember, we played 3-4-2-1 on a couple of occasions where Mendes and somebody else played as a send behind sort of Jerry Yates. But I just think with Rian and Andy Vyman in particular, they've got those tools now to sort of play the formation he likes. I mean, obviously for the QPR game, they tried to play, which was obviously John's first game, they tried to play 4-2-3-1, quickly realised it perhaps didn't have the correct personnel to do it, and it was quickly shelved, and they stuck to the 3-5-2, and in the end they were very difficult to beat and got over the line towards the end of the season on the back of some terrific form. So I fully expect it to be 4-2-3-1 this season, obviously availability permitting, but there is the option there that they do have that tactical flexibility to go to a 3-5-2, because obviously it's something they knew and worked on a lot last season. So it is sort of a formation they've got in their back pocket as and when required. But John's very astute. I do really like the way he operates, and he's very switched on. And he's a brilliant coach. I watched him on the training ground, very, very detailed. Him and his assistant Matt Gardner. So I think, I'm really optimistic about the season ahead. And it'll be. I think they will be exciting to watch as well.
Yeah, Leigh, the question I was going to ask you was, Jack said it feels like the start of something. It also feels like there's been more investment than we've seen for a long time, whether it's transfer fees. I know some people keep saying we're still spending the cash in money. Well, if we are still spending the cash in money, it's been some sort of money tree that keeps regenerating every so often. But clearly with the players we're bringing in, the wage bill must be going higher. I'm not asking you to steal an exclusive from the Derby Telegraph, but does it feel like there's something different behind the scenes as well?
I think there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes that I've been really impressed by. There's been a lot of investment into more farm in terms of, as you walk in through the double doors there, that's all been plastered now with sort of Derby regalia, iconic moments of the past managers, etc. Fans adorn the wall on the inside as you walk through where the players get changed. It does feel like that John has been very keen on sort of instilling a structure and a culture there. But what I would say about investment, clearly there has been a firm investment in the team. But my argument to that is there's no point bringing or I wouldn't have thought John Eustace would have agreed to have left Blackburn to come to Derby. And there was going to be no investment in the team to build the team in his vision. So, and my other argument is if there is investment, why would you announce it any time now while the transfer window open when the prices would just go through the roof? So, does it feel is anything different? I definitely sort of think culture wise, yeah, I think there's definitely a lot of things that have gone on that John's insisted upon that have sort of been taken in. Obviously, the first team dressing rooms, I've had a major liquor paint and a nice makeover that Lawrence Llewellyn-Bowen would be very proud of, I suspect. But yeah, I think when you look at the level of money that's invested in the squad, I mean, 5.9 million or whatever it was on Patrick Agyeman, is a serious investment. So we'll have to wait and see. I think the question's been batted down on numerous occasions about whether there's anybody been interested. But I think, yeah, there definitely will have been people looking around the place for sure.
And how much of the recruitment can we attribute to the income of Lee Bromby? And now we were promised that I forget what the football sporting intelligence unit, where that feels like the Adjumang one, Lee Bromby, perhaps some of the more domestic signings.
I think it's been very much, and it always has been, a very collaborative approach. I don't think there's nobody there at Derby who has, I would say, complete autonomy over the transfers. So obviously it all gets run by the manager, but I know John is a big fan of Agyemang, obviously big fan of Carlton. And if you look at the rest of the signings, he's obviously worked with Vyman before, Beck before. And these are players he knows and trusts and are solid championship players. So I think, as always, Derby's transfer operation mirrors quite a lot of clubs now. Whereas the old-fashioned way it was like manager to chairman signs the check, manager gets the players. Whereas if you look at the very top, you've got Liverpool, Richard Hughes and Michael Edwards, trying to put things in place for Arne Slot to sort of waft under his nose and say, right, we think he's good. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, well, let's go for that then. And then you'll have the manager who has his own ideas. So I think it's very much how it's been described to me is like this melting pot where people sit around the table, they discuss what the needs of the team, players are discussed, back and forth go, right, he's the best option, let's go for that. So that's how it works. I don't think there's anybody there in fact, I know there's nobody there who has complete sort of authority over the transfers.
And how about outgoings? Because that must be a bit that we must be coming to. In my calculations last night, we've got too many to fill a 25-man squad, given the various regulations.
Yeah, I mean, I asked John this at the media day. At the time, he said no, but I think there will be players who will naturally fall by the wayside as a result of Derby's business. That's just the nature of the game, isn't it? I'm not sure about Joe Ward. I think he could potentially leave. I still wouldn't rule out a loan move for DeJane Brown because I think actually he would be best off playing regular football. I think that'd be very good for his development. I've always been a big fan of getting young players out on loan at league clubs where the result matters. I know they've got the B team, but to be part of a dressing room, we saw that what he did at Gateshead, didn't he? He came back from Gateshead, he was absolutely unbelievable for them. Came back a different player, and I just think he needs to now go to that next step where he's sort of playing League Two, League One football, and there'd certainly be many takers for him, where he has that ability to play week in, week out, and be in a team where you sort of feel the pressure of a Saturday afternoon and a Tuesday afternoon. I think, B teams, under 21s, all well and good, but in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really matter if you win or lose because it's all about learning styles, tactics, how the sort of the first team play. So I think there could potentially be a move there for him. With Dion Sanderson arriving, Jake Rooney may be one of those that could be be a potential loanee. I think he's a very good defender, but again, I think he's at the stage of his career where he would need to go out and play regularly. So I think there are some decisions to be made there. I'm trying to think who else who's in that squad that could potentially be. It could potentially be on his way. I think obviously you've got the left back situation. They've got three left backs really, haven't they? So you've got Craig Forsyth is obviously It was excellent at the back end of last season. Owen Beck's obviously gonna play. Where does that leave Callum Elder? Is Callum going to be sort of happy with a sort of a place on the bench when he's at the sort of a peak years of his career when he needs to be playing? So I think there are some important decisions to be made, but I suspect many of them will be sort of made as we sort of approach the end of the window when we've sort of had a few games, and we'll see how the squad goes.
Yeah, it's interesting because, as you say, Nigel, 27 players we think that would require registration. So yeah, the maths dictates that somebody's got to go, especially if more are going to come in. But yeah, it's. I mean, Derby have an embarrassment of riches in that respect right now compared to what they thought they might have, or what certainly fans thought they might have even 6 months ago. Right? It's a massive development. I think fans are really positive, and I think, well, as it stands, this B team is going to be ridiculously strong, isn't it? But yeah, if there's outgoings, you say we're kind of short out widely. Do you mean just wingers or kind of fullbacks as well? So I know there's been a few links there.
Yeah, well, obviously they want to sign a right back, but I just think out wide, those players that. I mean, I remember when Warney was here, they'd looked at Kwame Poku, as potentially as a future sign, and there was obviously Paul left, but I think they just need those kind of players where I think they can drive past people, because Caden Jackson is not what I would really deem an authentic winger. I think he's a terrific hard worker, does a great job for the team, but in terms of goals and assists, is he going to be that winger that's going to supply the likes of a Carlton Morris or an Adjumang when he's fit? Corey Blackett-Taylor's form has been brilliant during the course of pre-season, but I would add that it was against the likes of Solihull, Walsall, teams that you would expect him to sort of be good at. He's got to do it in the Championship, and that's a big test for him this year. I'm a massive fan of him, but Championships are way bigger and a much more different kettle of fish, and I still think there are facets of his game that he can improve. So when I look at those wide areas, if you take out that, is Andy Vyman an authentic wide player? No, I think he sees himself as a number 10. Ryan Brewster's probably a number 10 centre forward who could probably do a job out wide. So when I'm talking about players who can get to the byline, beat a man, I still think we're maybe one or two short there, and I think the club would probably look to address that by bringing in one at least. I'd be surprised if they didn't.
It's interesting you mentioned Paul Ward there. Obviously, that feels like years ago now, to be honest. But obviously, we've not had you on the podcast since that change in management. What are your kind of impressions of John Eustace as a manager and as someone who's had regular dealings with him, and kind of how you think he'll approach this season in that respect, maybe compared to the previous approaches we've seen?
He's been great. I mean, he's a very, very level-headed guy. I've enjoyed dealing with him. I think he's warmed up into the role. I think when he came in last season, the pressure was on. Perhaps probably didn't realise how big a job it was when he took over, and obviously that night at QPR was a pretty chastening night for him. But I think the way he has modelled the team, and what I like about him, he's very, very adaptable. Like when he realised that the 4-2-3-1 wasn't going to work for him, he didn't just stick to it. And as some managers will go, that's all I know, that's all I'm going to play. We're just going to keep going through it, and then we'll see where it takes us. Whereas John was like, no, I can't. I just haven't got the capacity to play those players the way I want to play. So right, we'll go 3-5-2. I'll make us hard to beat. I think the perhaps one of the biggest differences is how well the team is organised out of possession. And I just think the way he managed to tease solid defensive performances out of the team, when they needed it, and he sort of instilled no fear in them either, which I thought was quite an impressive feat, particularly when the pressure was really on towards the back end of the season. The game against Hull, I had to say I did have my concerns about that, but the way they performed that day was brilliant. And he got some great performances out of some key players. I mean, Forsyth towards the back end of the campaign was absolutely monstrous. Harrison Armstrong, very, very good. Nat Phillips was unbelievable for sort of the last 10, 15 games of the season. And I've been lucky enough to see him on the training pitch as well. I think he's a fantastic manager. I think he's got a great career ahead of him in the game. I mean, he's already proven that by what he's done at Blackburn and Birmingham. He's got all the tools in his locker to concede. He's got a great staff around him, good experience. He doesn't ignore youth. And what I do like about the transfers, which this is obviously something he's very big on. You have like the experienced player, but then you have a young player underneath. They've all almost like every position's like got a mentor, if that makes sense. So you've got Carlton Morris who's approaching 30. You've got the young buck underneath him, Adjumang. You look at left back. You've got Owen Beck. You've got Craig Forsyth behind him. You've got in the centre halves. You've got Danny Batt. And Sondre Langas. They've got players of good experience who underneath them have got these young sort of players who are approaching their peak years of their career, being able to learn off him. And I know he's big on that. And when he brought the likes of Kemar Roof, Eric Peters, Jeff Hendrick in, and Martin Waghorn last season, just to help the squad out. He's very big on culture, very big on sort of players handle themselves properly around the training ground. And gone the days of having Sky Sports News on in the canteen. They've long gone. Now it is literally it's all about shape, what the team's working on, a reminder of tactical drills. It's very, very professional, and it's only going to serve Derby well in the future.
I think that's interesting because I think the early players that came in, people were a bit worried that they were the older heads and the average age of an already older side for the Championship was going up. But as you say, the more recent signings have brought that average back down and certainly raised the expectations of fans. That's always the danger when you bring in more exciting players. But fans are now excited and, like you said, looking up at the top half of the table and feeling that we shouldn't be anywhere near the relegation battle this season.
Yeah, I mean that my only concern would be that you very seldom see a team go from being in a relegation battle to being in the top six the following season. I think that the plan would be, I mean, for me personally, as from somebody who covers the club, I think a good season would be to get in and around that sort of mid-table. Maybe even had the odd cup run here. I think the squad's going to be deep enough and good enough to do that this year. And then go from there again. Go again from there. Can we then make that bridge from the 10 to the 6 position? Because that's how I like football clubs to operate. I still think, as we go on, there will be some favourites that fall by the wayside because that's the natural progression of any football club. So I'll be really interested to see. But just the reason why I don't think they will be involved in and around the playoff and promotion push, and I could well be proven wrong, is that you've got teams, as much as Derby have spent money, the amount of money that is like flying around in the Championship this year is frightening. Wrexham, Kiefer Moore, Connor Cody from Leicester. I mean, I never would have imagined Connor Cody going to Wrexham, to be honest. Birmingham City throwing cash about like it's water. You've then got Leicester, I think, who've still got the nucleus of a very, very good squad. You'll have Coventry will be strong again next season. I think they've just had a bid turned down for Charlie Hughes at Hull for about 7 million. You've then got the likes of Southampton, who I think if they sell Tyler Diblin to Everton, that'll bank them 30, 40 million. So then they're going to spend that on the squad. So you can sort of make a case for all these teams. I think Norwich will be really good. They've spent a bit this summer. I think Liam Manning's a very good coach. So I think it'll be really tough. I just don't see like the likes of Sheffield United all budging. So I think Derby's best ambition this season, I think, will be to be able to get to the sort of mid-table. I'm sure if you ask the players, they'll want to go much higher. But I think in terms of the progression of the football club and where it's currently at, and it has been on a very long journey. I think if we were to get to 10th and then get to next summer, evaluate and then go again. Where can we improve then? What players can we get then that you sort of keep the nucleus of the squad that's performed really well, and then add maybe one or two more stellar names, and then you can sort of say, yeah, I think that's a squad that's perhaps capable of going for the top 6 this season.
Yeah, I'm just conscious we've got about 2 minutes on this link, so
Sorry, yeah, I batter on a bit. So if you ever just tell me to shut up and just, if you just I don't mind that. If you
no
if you
worries.
got a question to ask.
No worries, mate. I was just going to say, just remind anyone listening or watching. I'm sure they know, but where can they find your stuff?
DerbyshireLive.co.uk. The old-fashioned way, if you still buy a newspaper every day, and obviously we've got DCFC_live, which is the Derby County Twitter account, and then you've got me, Leigh Curtis _DT. Although I have to be honest, my love affair with Twitter is rapidly decreasing. So, yeah, thanks, Elon.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Don't put this out on Twitter. He'll probably ban you, won't he?
Yeah. Oh, who knows? Who knows? But yeah, no. Thanks very much for joining us, Leigh. Thanks to you as well, Nigel. And I believe all that's left to say for this is up the rounds.